Hello, Professor Drimmer. I hope you're doing well. I was chosen as the speaker for my group on our project on modern art. We decided to do an exploration of the Freudian composition through formal analysis, which is a lot of big words, which I can talk more about later. But essentially, we wanted to look at how people naturally are creating composition in their artwork. So actually, if I go to the next slide, Freudian composition is the idea that subconsciously people will naturally add composition to their artworks without even knowing anything about like proper art composition or any of that art theory stuff. Subconsciously, they just will naturally develop these skills and without intending it, incorporate it into their paintings or photos. Most importantly, selfies is going to be the focus of this presentation, because our group theorizes that with the rise of social media and the increase of the production of selfies, there's a lot more just like fun and interesting photos to look at. And we believe that that's, in a way, a form of modern art, as social media has made this idea of selfies so much more developed and so much more proliferating in the modern society. So specifically, we wanted to look at a very fun selfie of this niche internet micro celebrity named Atrioc. He is a Twitch streamer. He used to work at the company Twitch. He's amassed over 200,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is a pretty big achievement. He also works at the company NVIDIA and as a marketing manager, which I guess could explain some of the visual cohesiveness in his productions. So, and I guess the last thing to talk about is the fact that he is a gamer, which would explain this photo right here. This is a photo of Atrioc at a gaming event known as Genesis, which isn't that important, but the more important part is that this photo is very loved and appreciated among his fan community. It seems to be a very fun photo. People like looking at it. People think it's a great photo, and just like in general, it is a fun photo to look at. So then through formal analysis, we're actually going to see the many different ways that Atrioc used art concepts to make this photo so much more fun. So first off, I want to talk about the symmetry of this photo. As you can see, I drew a big red line down the middle, and actually, if we crop out just a little bit of the photo, you can see it like perfectly divides this photo down the middle. And I think there's definitely a lot of key aspects to focus on. First off, his face is very symmetrical. You have his two eyes lying at the same level, like pretty much equal distance from his nose. His nose is perfectly split on this line. And his smile, all this, even his mustache, his very chiseled jawline, it's all very symmetrical along this line of symmetry, which is definitely a very fun and interesting personal aspect that Atrioc has. And I think this is very reminiscent of the early Greek sculpture, where they had a huge focus on mathematical perfection and perfecting the human form, in the idea that symmetry and like very calculated mathematical angles were perfect, and they tried to express that a lot through their sculpture. This is definitely an example of someone determining that own feature in themselves and then trying to promote it within their own photo. Some other interesting symmetrical compositions is that these two guys behind him both have these matching name tags, which lead up to their matching lanyards in similar colored shirts with like similar-esque expressions. So it's not like perfect symmetry, but it's a pretty pseudo symmetry of the placement of figures, which I think is very reminiscent of this painting called The Court of Gonzaga by Andrea Mantegna. I'm sorry for butchering that name. And I think it definitely adds this aura of like kingmanship or like leader, implying that these two are almost like disciples or like followers of the middle figure, just simply by composition, which it adds a bit of like fun and emphasis to Atrioc in the middle of this photo. Some other symmetrical elements of this photo is this background here. It's not very significant to the painting, but just like looking at these two, or the picture, looking at these two like big white blobs in the background and these two guys standing up, it definitely adds to the whole idea of symmetry and the rhythm of symmetry within this picture. Next up, I want to talk about the leading lines in this photo. And so first off, I want to talk about the leading lines. Oop, that's a glitch. I want to talk about the leading lines from this guy's eye that kind of conforms with this guy's hairline and a lot of just other small aspects in the background. This guy's eyes, from the general background, we can see like built up here. And then from actually this little shine mark on his hairline, which matches up very well with a lot of these background values of light, where we kind of see this transition from these like lighter values to darker values. And then just like other facial features and bodily features of Aatrox, and how they all simply converge onto his forehead, especially the shine mark, which definitely draws the viewer's eyes, especially this guy with like his direct gaze, naturally draws the viewer's eyes towards this one area of the forehead that has a shine mark, definitely accentuating the idea of having a prominent forehead in the photo, making it seem larger, making it seem more to life. I think that's definitely a very fun element of this photo that, well, one, draws the eyes, and two, just adds a little bit of like fun lightheartedness, ultimately focusing on a shine mark to lighten up the general mood and feeling of the photo. Next up, kind of in the idea of leading lines, are the triangles created by a lot of these leading lines that are less drawing and more framing in the photo. So first up, we see a triangle here created by this guy's jawline, and also once again this idea of light and dark of the audience. We see like this very light guy and this very dark patch, also conforming onto Aatrox's nose. We get some other triangles with like the actual very light patch to this audience. Some other ones like the jawline, the upper jawline, the shoulders and the hair, the facial features of the mouth. They all conform around Aatrox's face, especially creating this one framing region right here that goes over the forehead and the eyes and the nose, definitely highlighting this aspect where we see these very blue eyes, and like once again the forehead we had already talked about. Another framing aspect of these triangles is the mouth, this like really big beating smile. The triangle definitely frames it so that your eyes will naturally look at this as a point of, or like as a vertex of the painting, which is very cool. Definitely makes, or the picture I should say, it definitely makes you feel this expression a lot more. You definitely focus a lot more on these beating eyes and this massive smiling mouth, which overall, I mean, makes it a fun and intensive photograph that really highlights the features that Aatrox was trying to highlight in this photo, mainly this large smile, these like fun-filled eyes, and his, once again, large forehead. After that, I want to talk about the depth in this photo. So one very interesting thing about this photo is that you get a very clear foreground, middle ground, and background. And so this is actually very interesting because if you look at the photo, it appears like there's some idea of two-point perspective, but as you can see in the background, it doesn't actually particularly follow this two-point perspective, and instead we get this more intuitive perspective with the foreground, middle ground, and background. And this is actually very interesting of an effect. I mean, since it is taken from real life, it's not truly intuitive perspective, but there's an illusion of it created in the photograph, which is very reminiscent of like Northern Renaissance perspective. And what this does for us as the viewer is it makes Aatrox feel so much closer than these figures right here, and especially these figures right here. The distance between these figures right here is huge, and then even more between this guy and Aatrox. It makes Aatrox feel straight up in your face, like he just popped out of nowhere. It's almost reminiscent of like a pop-up book in photos, so it really feels like it's up in your face, like he just popped out and he's smiling at you, which I think adds to a lot of the silliness and humor of this selfie. After that, I want to talk about finally, I want to talk about the color and warmth of this photo. So I made a little mosaic grid right here to highlight so I made this little mosaic grid right here to summarize the colors in each section of the photo. And as you can see, it starts off with very dark, earthy tones at the start that are like easy to ignore and kind of fade into the background. And as you slowly move down, you get these warmer tones from this like pink all the way to this deep red. So it definitely draws the viewer towards this area right here, which, you know, happens to be Aatrox's face, just because of the natural seeking towards warmth. And then around that is these cool colors, these cool, very dark colors, which adds pretty much the greatest contrast in the photo right around his face, which certainly adds that idea of it popping out, and like making it very visible and very in your face, which adds once again to this very fun, silly nature of the photo that we have been discussing throughout this presentation. Another fun aspect too is that the differences in colors between his face and this like dark blue, which your eyes kind of naturally shift towards a more blackish color, and makes them look very pink and beady. So in conclusion, we believe that humans are naturally incorporating elements of composition and other like art theory into their selfies because they take so many selfies. Social media is this wonderful incubator where everyone wants to take these selfies, and it's literally assessing your photos and the quality of these photos live for you over and over again, which makes it the perfect place for humans to naturally develop these skills through trial and error without even knowing. And so we believe that that's the idea of Freudian composition, which which we think is very prominent in this like underappreciated pseudo art movement of like selfies that just happen to also be very artful. Yeah. So that's the idea of our presentation. We hope that you have learned about the idea of Freudian composition and, you know, a little bit about this guy, Atria. He's pretty silly. I personally am a big fan. So you should certainly check him out. But yeah, other than that, I hope you have a wonderful winter break, and thank you. All right, bye.